George? Pleasure to meet you. Pleasure to meet you. Leland? Cool. Pleasure to meet you, George. Yeah, pleasure. Yeah. But occasionally go to the Senate. Yes, and housing is more fun, Senate is more serious.
Yeah.
Like, you know it's getting down to business if it's less.
I did want to and like middle school, early high school, and like
Morse code was playing multiple loudspeaker, and we just let them land beeping freak us out. And at the end, they were like, "You didn't get it because you didn't know the Morse code." And we were like, "What's Morse code?" So some of them are quite hard.
Oh my god. Okay.
That was in New York.
Wow.
At 3 a.m. The 3 a.m. call and go to his escape room.
There's one Fairfax we might go to that
Aaron's working, is that you?
Yeah, they have like all the chefs leave bars. Saloon casino thing.
Yeah. You're all right, how are yours?
Nah.
Trump's calling saying that they need to hire somebody to hire John Harbaugh. It's like, that's great.
Okay, this isn't gonna work.
That's really high.
I can't even reach the
Put it
button.
up just a little higher.
Jeez, I've always wanted to do this. You can raise it after me. Well, good morning, everybody, and Happy New Year. I want us a little somber today, but yesterday our conference lost an extraordinary member, colleague, Doug LaMalfa. Doug LaMalfa devoted his life to serving the people of Northern California. He cared deeply for his community, and he stood proudly for the people and the land that he loved. Doug, you could always count on for his candor, his humor, and sadly, that will be missed, and he will be missed. Our thoughts and prayers are with the LaMalfa family, his wife Jill, and their 4 children, as well as his constituents that he served and cared about so deeply. But even in grief, House Republicans are getting back to the people's work. This week, we're cutting red tape to make it cheaper to build and furnish a home. we're advancing 3 appropriation bills that ensure spending is accountable to the people. And that's a massive shift from what Democrats have done and have prioritized over the last 4 years. We need to look no further than Minnesota and the Waltz waste scheme, of which I'm sure our whip will have something to say about later. I want to be very, very clear about what this Waltz waste scheme was. Democrats took money from our kids. Democrats took money from your kids, the kids who need it most, dumped it into fraudulent daycare facilities, and turned the other way when this abuse was reported. This has been their pattern, so this really shouldn't surprise anybody. But what's happening there is absolutely disgusting. Tim Walz can announce that he won't run again for governor, but he will still be held accountable by House Republicans, and that's exactly what we're doing this week in the House Oversight Committee. Republicans' efforts this week build on what we delivered in 2025, the largest middle-class tax cut in history. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, the Democrats voted to raise everybody's taxes, but we didn't let that happen as Republicans. We eliminated taxes on tips, on overtime, and tax cuts for seniors. We expanded the child tax care credit and delivered real relief for working class families. Now, we're going to further continue relief by lowering costs on housing, energy, and health care. Democrats can either get on board or explain why they're still defunding the policies that caused this crisis. And they're defending these policies that caused this crisis. Lastly, I want to end with recognizing President Trump and the actions that he took this weekend to protect American lives. For years, Maduro's regime turned Venezuela into a pipeline for deadly drugs, fueling one of the leading causes of death in our country. I think we all know somebody who has died from a drug overdose. President Trump stepped in and decisively took action. He didn't shy away from putting America first. He didn't shy away from taking action, and that's the bold leadership. That's exactly what we're bringing back to this country, and that's exactly the bold leadership that this country needs. And it's the same bold leadership that we're bringing to the House this year. With that, I'm proud to turn the floor over to one of my colleagues and friends, Carlos Jimenez, who is acutely aware of the situation of what's going on. So with that, Carlos.
I want to thank our conference chair. Thank you, Lisa, for this opportunity. And again, our hearts are with Doug LaMalfa and his family. It was a great loss. Doug was a super guy. Turning to the topic of Venezuela, the number one job of any government is to protect its citizens. And for years, international drug cartels, terrorist cartels have been killing hundreds of thousands of us in America, and we've turned a blind eye. And so we have failed. We failed miserably in the number one job of any government, which is to protect its citizens. Donald Trump has reversed that, and with the arrest of Nicolas Maduro on Saturday. By FBI agents, assisted by the way, an incredibly capable military and an operation that was unbelievable and will be historic in how it was all carried out. This administration has arrested Nicolas Maduro and his wife and brought them to face American justice for his hand in killing and harming Americans and in also harming American interests. Make no mistake, he was and he is the leader of the Cartel de los Soles from Venezuela. That's one of the cartels responsible for the deaths of, like I said, tens and hundreds of thousands of Americans for years. And so I think this is the beginning of, this is not the end of this struggle, because we have other cartels that we got to look at and destroy, as they've had a hand in killing us here in America. And so, on behalf of the people that I represent, I want to thank President Trump for the decisive action that he took. The people in Miami, the people of the area that I represent, are very happy that Nicolas Maduro is out of the way. And now, hopefully, it paves the way for a free and democratic Venezuela. A Venezuela that is not an adversary of the United States, but a Venezuela that is an ally of the United States, and a Venezuela that is no longer ruled by an illegitimate leader, because Nicolas Maduro is, in fact, an illegitimate leader. It was proven by Maria Corina Machado and Mundo Gonzalez when they won their elections a year and a half ago by over 70%. But he's an illegitimate leader, and so now we can turn to a free, hopefully a free and democratic Venezuela. I know that's what President Trump wants, and I know that's what the Venezuelan people in Venezuela and the Venezuelan people that have fled Venezuela want desperately for their homeland, to be able to say that once again they can go back home to a free, democratic, and prosperous Venezuela. Venezuela is one of the richest countries in natural resources in South America. They will be able to restore their country with their own resources. They're not going to need much help from the United States. And there are people that are already waiting, including Maria Corina Machado, to take the reins of power. It's going to take a while. This is not something that's going to be done overnight. This regime has been in power for about 25 years. We don't want chaos. We don't want bloodshed in Venezuela, and the Trump administration is working hard to make sure that that doesn't happen, but that at the end, there will be a free and democratic Venezuela. And again, I want to thank the President for taking his decisive action to protect American lives and American interests, but also to restore freedom and democracy to the people of Venezuela. Thank you.
First, I too would like to acknowledge the devastating loss of our friend and fellow Congressman Doug LaMalfa. Doug was a loving father and husband and a staunch advocate for California's 1st Congressional District and rural America. Our prayers, we will probably say over and over for the next few days, are with Doug's wife and family as they grieve this unimaginable loss. Since I last stood at this podium, the extent of the Somali fraud in my home state of Minnesota has been exposed even further. 23-year-old independent journalist Nick Shirley put the sheer brazenness and magnitude of the fraud on full display by uncovering $110 million in daycare fraud in just one day. He simply looked for fraud and found it in a matter of hours. Our embarrassment of a governor and sorry excuse for an attorney general had 7 years to address it, and they didn't do a thing. I will also point out that our media has been asleep at the switch and has refused to do their job, which is holding people accountable on both sides of the aisle for their failures. Our worthless paper back at home is actually run by our governor's former commerce commissioner. And all they're still doing is trying to cover up for what is clearly one of the biggest fraud stories in the history of this country. From food nutrition assistance meant for children to fake autism centers and empty daycares. Tim Walz and Keith Ellison allowed fraudsters to take advantage of hardworking taxpayers at every turn. And now Walz is running scared. But let me be clear. Tim Walz dropping out of Minnesota's governor's race will not exempt him from the storm of accountability that is heading his way. Between the Oversight Committee's congressional investigation and President Trump's decisive action, Walz can try to run, but he's not going to be able to hide for long. The first assistant U.S. attorney for Minnesota revealed that the rampant fraud could reach a staggering $9 billion. Of the 98 people charged with fraud, 85 of them are Somali. Let me repeat again, that's $9 billion stolen from hardworking Americans to fund lavish lifestyles for Somali fraudsters and bankroll al-Shabaab terrorists. And I have 3 words regarding Somalis who have committed fraud against the American taxpayer and have refused to assimilate as Americans. Send them home. Our nation will no longer tolerate those who take advantage of our charity and refuse to assimilate into our culture. The full weight of justice and accountability is coming for Tim Walz, his administration, and the depraved fraudsters. The time for swindling American people is over. And with that, I turn it over to Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Whip. I join all of my colleagues in mourning the loss of Doug LaMalfa. Doug was a dear friend who I knew since the day he walked into Congress. And he was a gentle giant, you know, as a big guy who was just the warmest heart you could know, and had a great sense of humor and had a passion for water issues, for Western issues. He was the chairman of the Western Caucus, you know, really cared about natural resources issues and fought for all of those and talked about them on the House floor with members of Congress all the time. Doug was respected by everybody, Republicans, Democrats alike. It's a big loss for all of us. And we know he leaves behind a loving family, a wife and young kids, and we're going to continue to keep him in our prayers. So it's a tough way to start a new year, but we also know what challenges are ahead for the country that we want to continue to work on addressing. We did a lot last year to start reversing the damage that President Trump and all of us inherited from the Biden years. The high inflation, the high interest rates, so many rules and regulations that were targeted to hurt families, to increase costs for families that we have been working to reverse. President Trump's done a lot of things through executive action. We worked closely with the president on things like the Working Families Tax Cuts, other big bills, over 20 CRAs, Congressional Review Acts, reversing costly, ridiculous Biden-era regulations so that we can lower costs for families. And we're going to continue. We have a lot more work to do. We talked about this yesterday very extensively. President Trump was fully engaged with our members yesterday, as he has been this entire first year. It's not even a full year in office. And yet we have seen an incredibly engaged president who is working with a Republican House and Senate and Congress to fight for the American people who had been left behind by the previous administration. We talked about what we can do to keep lowering costs in areas like energy, you know, where in many states are now finally seeing less than $2 a gallon gasoline. That's more money in the pockets of families. Working on lowering health care costs, where Democrats only want to give money to big insurance companies. President Trump talked about letting families have the decision on how to spend that money. Not the insurance companies, but families controlling where the money goes. And if they can get a better plan for themselves and their family, they should be able to make those decisions, as he's done other things to lower prescription drug prices. We're going to keep working on those ideas. We had all of our committee chairmen talking about all the things that are going to be teed up, things that are already coming through committee, lowering housing costs, so many other things that we're going to be doing. And then every member was able to give their input. And members gave a lot of really good input on looking at an agenda that's going to be continued to focus on lowering costs for families and getting this country back on track as we celebrate 250 years of American independence. It's something to be proud of. But democracy is not easy. Democracy takes work. It takes engagement from the public. As we go into an election next, November, later this year, the country needs to stay engaged in fighting for the kind of reforms that we've been able to deliver so that we can keep doing what it takes to get this country back on track. We are excited about this opportunity. The margin's going to be as slim as it ever has been. And you'll get to report every day about, gee whiz, with a one-vote majority, can they do this and will they pass that? Might as well cue up the stories you wrote last year because you had a lot of the same stories. Gee whiz, there's no way they'll be able to pass the reconciliation bill until it passed, because we came together as Republicans to go deliver for those American families who are counting on us. While Democrats wake up every day, and we see it with Venezuela, some of the same Democrats who just years ago were saying, when is somebody going to do something about Maduro? And President Trump finally does and brings him to justice for all the horrible things he's done to kill Americans. And those same Democrats are then saying, how dare the president do it? Because Democrats have shown all they care about every day is they wake up in the morning and they just want to oppose what Donald Trump does, no matter what it is. When he's delivering on the promises the American people elected him to carry through on, all the Democrats want to do is obstruct and fight and vote no. And if that's what they want to do as a party, just to be a lost in the wilderness, far-left, radical, socialist, Marxist party, then let them stay lost in the wilderness. We're going to keep fighting and delivering for those families who are counting on us. They'd love to see Democrats work with this president, but if the Democrats want to continue moving towards the Mandami wing of their party, which is where they're headed, and defend a dictator who was literally letting narco-terrorists run his country, then we're going to continue. Think about this. Hundreds last year. Hundreds of thousands of Americans died because of drugs that came into this country through people like Maduro. And President Trump said, we're going to stop those deaths from happening. We care about those families. Every family who has seen loss from fentanyl death or cocaine or heroin overdose. President Trump did something about that to defend Americans here at home, and he will continue to do that on every front. And we're going to keep delivering with President Trump for those same families who should not struggle anymore. And it's going to be a very busy year. It's going to be a year of unified Republicans delivering for hard-working American families. And the man leading us through that effort is our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson.
Well, good morning, everybody, and Happy New Year, and welcome back to the second session of the 119th Congress. We woke up yesterday, as it's been mentioned this morning, to very tragic news. Our dear friend and colleague, Doug LaMalfa, passed away unexpectedly at the age of 65. We were on the way into our gathering, our retreat that we had planned for policy, planning, strategy purposes. And I quite literally found out about it on the way in, and it really shook us. Doug was a great man. He really was truly a great man. He's a lifelong resident of Northern California and deeply loved the people he represented. He was a fierce fighter, as you've heard, for his state's its vast natural resources and its beauty, and the people he represented. And there are stories coming out from his constituents about how dedicated he was to the people he served, and how in that vast area of Northern California that he covered, he would drive hundreds of miles to go meet with just a handful of constituents, and people would ask him about the wisdom of being on the road so much. And he said, I represent them just as much as I do the people in the big city, and they deserve to have their rep. And we just love that spirit about him. I was on the phone yesterday with his beloved wife, Jill, who's now a widow, and they had 4 children, as was mentioned, and Jill is in as good a spirits as you could imagine, having just had this tragic loss, and she was with him, right before he passed, and she has great comfort, though, in knowing the blessed assurance, as we say in the Christian church, that she knows where he is, and we're comforted by her comfort in that. We're praying for them, and we're going to miss him dearly. I told her that Doug was, he's one of the most respected people in this institution, not just because of his selfless service and what he brought to it, but the way that he dealt with others and dealt with all of us. And I told her just a brief reflection that came to mind. I was on the phone with her yesterday. A few years ago, I was the vice chairman of the House Republican Conference, and one of the jobs of the vice chairman is to amplify the message on the floor. And so we try to fill the floor time, and I would sponsor these special order hours, and I would try to recruit members to come, sometimes late at night, and use that time effectively and advance our message. And Doug LaMalfa was the most faithful member always, and was to the day of his death. Blake Moore is now the vice chair and told the same story this morning, but I told his wife, Jill, last night, I said, I remember this one particular night, I think session had been canceled for the following day, and everybody jumped on airplanes and went home, and everybody canceled their RSVP for the floor, and Doug showed up. He showed up. He always did. And he and I think, were the only two that spoke that night and tried to fill the hour, and we were done. I walked off the floor, and it's like a ghost town there late at night like that, and I looked up at the big guy and put my arm on his shoulder. I said, Doug, thanks, man, but why'd you do this? You didn't have to do it. And he looked at me so serious and put his big hand on my chest, and he said, because I believe in this country, I believe in our cause, and I believe in you. And he said, we have to fill this time to tell the American people what we're doing. And I love that commitment about him. And we all did. Tom McClintock is a colleague of his from California, and they've served together for a long time. And Tom told me yesterday, I don't think he'd mind me repeating this, but he said, I think Doug LaMalfa was the kindest man I ever knew. And he said, y'all know McClintock, he's real serious. He said, I'm not saying one of the kindest. I'm saying the kindest man I ever knew. That's a high praise, so we'll miss him. In addition to this beginning, the second session of the 119th Congress, it's also, as you know, January 1st marked the beginning of our 250th year, the semi-quincentennial, or as we like to call it, the supercentennial. And it is going to be a big year for America, and we're excited about that. The America 250 Committee kicked off with an epic firework display on the National Mall a couple nights ago to commemorate the 250 years of American excellence. All 50 states, of course, will follow with their own events around the country this year, and of course, it will all culminate in the nation's birthday on July 4th. We have a lot to celebrate. We're still an experiment in self-governance. There is no guarantee of how long this grand experiment will last, but we are very bullish on America. And we talked about it this morning with all the House Republicans gathered with this great, while we're mourning Doug's death, we also have this anticipation and excitement about what's ahead of us, and we understand the magnitude of the history that's upon us here and the responsibility that everybody in this building has to continue this great republic, and we're going to keep it. We began our fateful year yesterday, as I mentioned, with the we called it the Agenda 250 Policy Forum. It was very efficacious, very productive. Nearly every member of the conference attended. Very, very beneficial time that we had together, and the team behind me is ready to hit the ground running to continue delivering on our mandate, and all of our members are committed to that. There's a great sense of unity in the House Republican Conference. I think I can say unlike I've ever seen before. Resolve, locked arm in arm, understanding what's ahead of us, what we need to continue to accomplish, and we're bullish about doing that. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent has said a lot over the holiday about what we're to anticipate in the new year. He's echoing some of the things that we have been saying and feeling, what our constituents are already beginning to feel. His quote, though, in one of these interviews, he said, 2025 merely set the table. The feast and the banquet will be in 2026. It's going to be a blockbuster year. And I think he's exactly right. Our working families tax cut, the big, beautiful bill, those provisions will hit American households and wallets, and you're going to see all boats begin to rise. And while Democrats continue to wither, Republicans will continue to demonstrate that we are the only team capable of restoring American greatness. We don't just talk about it, we do it. And it's not, it's our legislation, and if it was not for these bills, American families, let's not forget, would have experienced the largest, most crushing tax increase in the history of the country in 2026. All those Trump-era tax cuts would have expired, and we'd have had $5 trillion of taxes just descend upon that weight on all families in this country. We stopped that, and we turned it back the other direction. Thanks to the working families tax cuts, that will be avoided completely. All American families are going to receive the largest tax refund they ever have, and that all begins very soon here. Every Democrat, remember this too, voted for record tax increases, while every Republican voted for record tax cuts and refunds to the people. And we hope everybody remembers that simple fact the next time the Democrats start talking about trying to make life more affordable and all this. There's only one party actually doing that. It's the Republican Party. I want to make one more point about our meeting yesterday. Both House Republicans and House Democrats, as you might have noted, held closed-door conference-wide meetings this week. House Republicans discussed how we can continue to drive down costs for working families, make our streets and neighborhoods safe again, and restore American dominance on all fronts. And meanwhile, by contrast, what were the House Democrats doing? Well, they held an emergency meeting to determine how to think about the successful ousting of an illegitimate narco-terrorist dictator who killed dissidents, poisoned Americans, and plunged 90% of his country into abject poverty. Nicolas Maduro, who the Biden administration placed a $25 million bounty on, is no longer terrorizing the people of Venezuela anymore. I'm so grateful for Congressman Jimenez, who came in to share his perspective as a South Floridian and Miami person, resident. They understand this as acutely as anybody. Because the action was taken by President Trump, Democrats are apoplectic. They claim they didn't like Maduro either, but because President Trump took action, as was noted earlier, they're now critical of it. They're going to cut off their own nose to spite their face. This is the modern Democrat Party. Instead of a caucus-wide therapy session How about Democrats acknowledge that it's a fundamentally good thing for freedom-loving people around the world that Maduro is gone? And I want to reiterate what I said following our Gang of Eight briefing yesterday, which was the 20th such briefing by the Trump administration to Congress regarding Venezuela. And there's more scheduled this week, as you know, in about an hour or so, to 45 minutes. All the members of Congress are going to meet in the CVC auditorium, and all the administration officials are going to brief them on this issue. The U.S. military operation in Venezuela was decisive and justified. Nicolas Maduro was responsible for the deaths of Americans after years of trafficking illegal drugs and violent cartel members into this country, and this is undisputed, and everybody knows it. These are crimes for which he's been properly indicted in a U.S. court, and an arrest warrant was duly issued, and now he has learned what accountability looks like under President Trump. The U.S. is no longer going to allow criminal regimes to profit from wreaking havoc and destruction on our country. That's what the American people voted for. They wanted to return to the rule of law, insanity at the border, and they wanted this kind of nonsense and dangerous activity to stop. Republicans are putting Americans first and succeeding where others have failed. The operation demonstrated the unmatched, by the way, precision, effectiveness, professionalism, and capacity of the U.S. military. There's no fighting force on the planet capable of doing what we can do. And you should sleep well at night knowing that you live under the blanket of that protection. Our brave military was in and out of Venezuela in 2.5 hours, and there wasn't a single American casualty. It's really something that everybody should respect and applaud. And because I'm sure you'll have questions, I'm going to be clear. The Constitution gives Congress the power to declare war. There's no dispute about that, of course. But we are not in a war in Venezuela. The Constitution also vests the president with the power as commander-in-chief that he can use to deploy military forces to address threats to the U.S. and enforce our laws. And that's what happened here. It's exactly what happened here. The War Powers Act has been cited by Democrats. It only requires notification to Congress within 48 hours of the initiation of hostilities. It does not require prior approval, and they properly notified Congress. And I've mentioned publicly, Secretary Rubio called me at 4 a.m. To notify the Speaker of the House of what was taking place and why. Despite the claims, by the way, they submitted that to us in writing as well. They checked all the boxes, did everything they were supposed to do. Despite the claims by some of my colleagues under the War Powers Act, there's just not a requirement that they do anything else. I'll address appropriations, take your questions. This week, the House is going to advance, as you heard, the next set of the FY26 appropriations bills. We're going to continue our strides to restore regular order around here and get back to the appropriations process. We're not totally there yet on the full, what you would fully call regular order, but my, have we pushed this boulder up that hill. And it's been quite an effort, as you know. Since I became Speaker 2 years and 3 months ago or so, I started talking about this, the urgency, the necessity of us getting Congress back to work the way it's supposed to. And we've made big strides in that now. And so this week, as you know, we're going to advance energy and water, commerce, justice, science, and the interior environment appropriations bills, 3 more in that package. We have plans to do the next 3 next week, and then we'll continue. And I want to say this is bipartisan effort. You got both parties working on this, and that's to be applauded. Our appropriators worked very hard through the Christmas holiday to have these bills prepared on our return. They worked through the holiday, and my team, all of us, we worked. We didn't take any time off to make sure this would happen, and we're grateful for all that work. These 3 bills spend less than if we had advanced another continuing resolution. They deliver critical priorities for House Republicans' districts, and they continue to advance President Trump's America First agenda. With just 3 weeks to go until the funding deadline, we're very hopeful, very bullish that this package of bills is going to continue our good momentum towards completing annual appropriations with regular order without a bloated, wasteful omnibus spending bill. And I'll close with that and take your questions. But I told the House Republicans just now, I said, don't lose sight of this great Christmas blessing. We did not have a Christmas omnibus nightmare situation for 3 years in a row now. Why? Because Republicans take our responsibility seriously. Yeah, go ahead.
When President Trump is talking about military action in Greenland, you said that there didn't need to be military notification or that this wasn't a war act in Venezuela. If there is military action in Greenland, would Congress need authorization? And also, would Congress need authorization for need to have power of the purse for control of oil in Venezuela?
Okay, let me address them in turn. We're not at war with Greenland. We have no intention of being it. We have no reason to be at war with Greenland, okay? Everybody knows there's geopolitical and strategic importance of that landmass. And that's what everyone has talked about. By the way, this is not just President Trump. I think this goes back to Truman. Like many presidents have acknowledged the strategic placement of Greenland and how important that could be to our country. And the president's talked about that, rare earth minerals and other things. They're talking about diplomatic channels for this, okay? There's lots been said about it, but I know this personally because I talked to the governor of my state a couple of days ago, Jeff Landry, who has been appointed to be our person there, our individual who would go and help with these negotiations. So that is in America's interest. It is not, I think it's not against Greenland's interest. There's a lot of thoughtful discussion to be had there, and that's what we expect is going to happen. So all this stuff about military action and all that, I don't think it's, I don't even think that's a possibility. I don't think anybody's seriously considering that. And in the Congress, we're certainly not. Okay, so wait, with regard to Venezuela, we have to see what plays out. I went to the Gang of Eight briefing. It was very detailed, as even the Democrats who are grumbling about some of this, who were in that briefing, will attest. They have said as much. It was military precision. Our armed forces do an extraordinary job. General Kane is an extraordinary leader for the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Another reason you should sleep well at night. Secretary Hegseth, great job at Defense, at Department of War, Department of War doing all this. Secretary Rubio was there, Attorney General Bondi, CIA Director Ratcliffe. I mean, we had everybody. And they went through the details and they explained the rationale and why everything happened as it did. I don't think anybody could have any complaint or question about that. And I expect they're going to give almost that same level of information in a larger auditorium. And I think members of Congress are going to understand this fully. What happens next? There are plans and procedures in place, but it's impossible to know exactly how it's all going to play out. We have to see how that works. I trust the people who are in charge of this. I'm told, and the President has mentioned, and Secretary Rubio has mentioned, that our American oil companies will be involved in getting that infrastructure back up, and that will have a lot to do with how all this sorts out. But we don't know the details of that yet, and I certainly don't. The House has not been apprised of it because I think it is in the works right now. This has just happened. This is a seismic development. This just happened. Some of this is unprecedented. It is not a regime change. I want to emphasize that. It is a change of the actions of the regime. As you know, they have an interim president now, and so we're not boots on the ground. We're not occupying Venezuela. We haven't declared war on Venezuela. We went to get a criminal who had been indicted in a U.S. court under our due process, and we're going to bring them to justice on American soil. We should applaud that. It's going to stop the killing of millions of people. Yeah.
Just to follow up, because you say that there's military action is not going to happen. So then, is it responsible for the White House to continue to raise the specter of military action? They said very explicitly.
I've spoken to the question. I'm not going to take 1,000 gotcha questions this morning trying to pit me against the White House. It is. I've said I can't be more clear than I have been on this. I've given lengthy statements on it. You know where I stand. You know where the House stands. We're going to get a briefing today, and then we'll see how it develops. So everybody relax. Yes.
Last question. On that note, though, did Secretary Rubio tell you all in the briefing that the U.S. plans to buy?
Look, I was.
Also, if that is the case, first of all, how does that square with NATO? And then how does that square with the overwhelming message from Americans in the election that they care about the economy and issues here at home?
Okay, look, it is an America first priority to look to our strategic and national defense initiatives and what would be advantageous to us. Greenland offers a lot of that. I mean, I've mentioned this already. Obviously, the strategic importance of its geographical placement, but also the rare earth minerals that are there and everything else. That is directly in line with commitments made on the campaign trail by President Trump and all of us to seek America's interest first. Now, that said, does that mean we're going to go send troops into Greenland and take it over? No. I mean, they only have, 40, 50,000 people there. This is not a thing, okay? Did Marco say something like that? I think he did. I mean, it was over a 2-hour meeting in the Gang of Eight, and I think he did make a comment, but I think he did it with a smile. He was trying. I took that as a joke. He was trying to be humorous about it, okay? Do we know whether there's going to be some sort of financial arrangement in these negotiations? I mean, none of us know, but Marco did not go into the Gang of Eight and say, we're going to buy Greenland. That's not what happened, okay? Marco Rubio was a long-serving member in Congress, in the Senate. He is very close colleagues and friends with most of us in the Gang of Eight who were in that room, and we spoke as old friends and colleagues, and it was a relaxed setting because we all know one another, and everybody in that room knows that Marco Rubio is an honest broker, and in my view, the most highly qualified person. He is a gift to America right now with his insights, particularly on these issues, Western Hemisphere and Venezuela and all the rest. So he is one that's highly respected in that room. And even when you disagree with some of the play calls, they can't dispute anything he said. And look, everybody understood the context of that conversation. It was obviously supposed to be off the record because we're in the skiff and it was highly classified. But there were a lot of things said back and forth that you should not be running with as headlines as if it's some sort of new U.S. policy. They wouldn't have broken it in front of Chuck Schumer in the Gang of Eight. Okay, yeah, well, last one, yeah.
The president, as you saw, said that he is going to get 50 million barrels of oil or something from Venezuela. Does the president have the authority to unilaterally seize oil from Venezuela and then use the money from the sale of that oil as he sees fit, as he said he's going to do?
I hear Congressman Jimenez over my shoulder, who's the world's expert on all this, saying that is sanctioned oil, okay? And I'm not going to get up here and tell you the details of all these developments because it's still being developed. There are a lot of ideas. There's some brainstorming being done out loud by all sorts of people, many of whom are not even authorized to have these conversations. I would not run with too many of these headlines right now, okay? I'm telling you that all of this is developing right now. I am very confident we have steady hands at the wheel, and then this will be figured out. So stay tuned. Thank you all.
Do you have a date for State of the Union?
I believe State of the Union is going to be...
Sir, do you want to
Can you say that? That's important to say.
Get back to the podium.
State of the Union will be when?
I think the date, this is off the top of my head, I think it's like maybe February 24th we're looking at, okay? It'll be soon. We were looking at some alternative dates and trying to figure out what works, but I think that's the week that we're in session and in mid to late February, and that would be the preference of the White House. But just wait for further development, but I wanted you to know it's coming. It's coming.
Are you concerned with the death of Mr. LaMalfa and what happened, obviously, with Marjorie Taylor Greene resigning? Is your majority in jeopardy? Is it so tenuous that the House could flip during this Congress?
No. Can I give you my honest reflection on this? Okay. As was noted earlier, we've been working with it. Sorry, I didn't want to do all this. We have been working with a razor-thin majority since I became Speaker. And as you know, at many points in the last year, we had a 1 or 2 vote majority at any given moment. The passing of Doug was a shock to us because we'll miss him as an individual. But this is the group that has demonstrated over and over and over and over that we defy expectations and make history. Look, we do this. It's a very simple thing. Okay, this is not the acumen of Speaker Johnson or necessarily all the teamwork of the Republican conference. This is because I'm going to be very honest with you. I'm a person of deep faith, and we trust in God. That is our national motto, and we act upon that. I put up one slide this morning at the end of conference, and it's a favorite that I have on my phone, and I share it with everybody, and it's an image of the Red Sea party. Okay, and some of you guys are going to mock me for this. But look, we just came upon the 250th anniversary. We just started the 250th anniversary of the greatest nation in the history of the world. Our founders and the framers of the Constitution, the founders, including George Washington, the father of our country, used to speak openly about his belief, his solemn belief, that it was divine providence that allowed us to create this great country. I believe that is the secret of our genius. It is the reason we have become the most successful, most powerful, most prosperous, most benevolent nation in the history of the world. And we do well to remember that, and we do. And I believe that God's not done with America yet. Can I put it to you that way, Chad? God's not done with America yet, and it's up to the people in this building to keep this great republic going for another 250 years. And
one flu season away from losing the majority.
None of us are guaranteed tomorrow. None of us. We don't know what's going to happen. The Bible says you don't worry about tomorrow. You focus on today. Today has enough trouble as its own. We do that every day. We're going to keep delivering. Those seas are going to part when necessary. We're going to keep this great republic. And I know I'm going to be maligned for saying that, and I don't care, because that my worldview is we give God the glory. I believe God has blessed America. I believe it is in Him who we trust, and I think we do well to remind everybody of that. I'm not worried about the numbers. I don't get up in apprehension or anxiety in any day. I get up every day with hope and anticipation to see what God's going to do for our great country. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Amen.